today we've got something a little bit different for you. We are at Liverpool Cathedral today, so I hope you all enjoy.
Liverpool Cathedral is the cathedral of the Anglican Diocese of Liverpool. Built on St James's Mount in Liverpool, and the seat of the Bishop of Liverpool. It may be referred to as the Cathedral Church of Christ in Liverpool, as recorded in the document of consecration, or the Cathedral Church of the Risen Christ. Liverpool, being dedicated to Christ in especial remembrance of his most glorious resurrection. Liverpool Cathedral is the largest cathedral and religious building in Britain, and the 8th largest church in the world. The cathedral is based on a design by Giles Gilbert Scott and was constructed between 1904 and 1978. The total external length of the building, including the Lady Chapel, dedicated to the Blessed Virgin, is 207 yards, 189 meters, making it the longest cathedral in the world. Its internal length is 160 yards, 150 meters. In terms of overall volume, Liverpool Cathedral ranks as the 5th largest cathedral in the world and contests with the incomplete Cathedral of St. John the Divine in New York City for the title of largest Anglican church building.
Hi, we're in the lift going up to the roof of the cathedral.
With a height of 331 feet, 101 meters, it is also one of the world's tallest non-spired church buildings and the 4th tallest structure in the city of Liverpool. The cathedral is recorded in the National Heritage List for England as a designated Grade 1 listed building. The Anglican Cathedral is one of 2 cathedrals in the city.
I believe when you get up onto the roof you'll be 331 feet off the deck. One drop. See that down in the middle, that's 14 tons.
Yeah, she don't care.
The Roman Catholic Metropolitan Cathedral of Christ the King is situated approximately half a mile to the north. The cathedrals are linked by Hope Street, which takes its name from William Hope, a local merchant whose house stood on the site now occupied by the Philharmonic Hall, and was named long before either cathedral was built. John Charles Ryle was installed as the first Bishop of Liverpool in 1880. But the new diocese had no cathedral, merely a pro-cathedral, the parish church of St. Peter, Church Street. St. Peter's was unsatisfactory, it was too small for major church events, and moreover was, in the words of the rector of Liverpool, ugly and hideous. In 1885 an Act of Parliament authorised the building of a cathedral on the site of the existing St. John's Church, adjacent to St. George's Hall. A competition was held for the design, and won by William Emerson. The site proved unsuitable for the erection of a building on the scale proposed, and the scheme was abandoned. In 1900, Francis Chavez succeeded Ryle as bishop, and immediately revived the project to build a cathedral. There was some opposition from among members of Chavez diocesan clergy, who maintained that there was no need for an expensive new cathedral. The architectural historian John Thomas argues that this reflected a measure of factional strife between Liverpool Anglicanism's very evangelical or low church tradition, and other forces detectable within the religious complexion of the new diocese. Chavez, though himself an evangelical, regarded the building of a great church as a visible witness to God in the midst of a great city. He pressed ahead, and appointed a committee under William Forward to consider all possible sites. The St. John's site being ruled out, Forward's committee identified 4 locations: St. Peter's and St. Luke's, which were, like St. John's, found to be too restricted, a triangular site at the junction of London Road and Monument Place, and St. James's Mount. There was considerable debate about the competing merits of the 2 possible sites, and Forward's committee was inclined to favour the London Road triangle. However, the cost of acquiring it was too great, and the St. James's Mount site was recommended. An historian of the cathedral, Vere Cotton, wrote in 1964. Looking back after an interval of 60 years, it is difficult to realize that any other decision was even possible. With the exception of Durham, no English cathedral is so well placed to be seen to advantage both from a distance and from its immediate vicinity. That such a site, convenient to yet withdrawn from the center of the city, dominating the city and clearly visible from the river, should have been available is not the least of the many strokes of good fortune which have marked the history of the cathedral. Fundraising began, and new enabling legislation was passed by Parliament. The Liverpool Cathedral Act 1902 authorised the purchase of the site and the building of a cathedral, with the proviso that as soon as any part of it opened for public worship, St. Peter's Church should be demolished and its site sold to provide the endowment of the new cathedral's chapter. St. Peter's Place as parish church of Liverpool would be taken by the existing church of St. Nicholas near the pier head. St. Peter's Church closed in 1919, and was finally demolished in 1922. In late 1901, 2 well-known architects were appointed as assessors for an open competition for architects wishing to be considered for the design of the cathedral. George Frederick Bodley was a leading exponent of the Gothic revival style, and a former pupil and relative by marriage of Sir George Gilbert Scott. Richard Norman Shaw was an eclectic architect, having begun in the Gothic style, and later favouring what his biographer Andrew Saint calls full-blooded classical or imperial architecture. Architects were invited by public advertisement to submit portfolios of their work for consideration by Bodley and Shaw. From these, the two assessors selected a first shortlist of architects to be invited to prepare drawings for the new building. It was stipulated that the designs were to be in the Gothic style. Robert Gladstone, a member of the committee to which the assessors were to report, said, "There could be no question that Gothic architecture produced a more devotional effect upon the mind than any other which human skill had invented." This condition caused controversy. Reginald Blumfield and others protested at the insistence on a Gothic style, a worn-out flirtation in antiquarianism, now relegated to the limbo of art delusions. An editorial in The Times observed, "To impose a preliminary restriction is unwise and impolitic. The committee must not hamper itself at starting with a condition which is certain to exclude many of the best men." Eventually it was agreed that the assessors would also consider designs of a Renaissance or classical character. For architects, the competition was an important event. Not only was it for one of the largest building projects of its time, but it was only the third opportunity to build an Anglican cathedral in England since the Reformation in the 16th century, St. Paul's Cathedral being the first, rebuilt from scratch after the Great Fire of London in 1666, and Truro Cathedral being the second, begun in the 19th century. The competition attracted 103 entries, from architects including Temple Moore, Charles Rennie Mackintosh, Charles Riley, and Austin and Paley. In 1903, the assessors recommended a proposal submitted by the 22-year-old Giles Gilbert Scott, who was still an articled pupil working in Temple Moore's practice, and had no existing buildings to his credit. He told the assessors that so far his only major work had been to design a pipe rack. The choice of winner was even more contentious with the Cathedral Committee when it was discovered that Scott was a Roman Catholic, but the decision stood. Although young, Scott was steeped in ecclesiastical design and well versed in the Gothic Revival style. His grandfather, Sir Gilbert Scott, and father, George Gilbert Scott Jr., having designed numerous churches. George Bradbury, the surveyor to the Cathedral Committee, reported, "Mr. Scott seems to have inherited the architectural genius so marked in the Scott family for the last 3 or 4 generations. He is very pleasant, agreeable, enthusiastic, tall, and looks considerably older than he actually is." Appearances notwithstanding, Scott's inexperience prompted the Cathedral Committee to appoint Bodley to oversee the detailed architectural design and building work. Work began without delay. The foundation stone was laid by King Edward VII in 1904. Cotton observes that it was generous of Bodley to enter into a working relationship with a young and untried student. Bodley had been a close friend of Scott's father, but his collaboration with the young Scott was fractious, especially after Bodley accepted commissions to design 2 cathedrals in the US, necessitating frequent absences from Liverpool. Scott complained that this has made the working partnership agreement more of a farce than ever, and to tell the truth, my patience with the existing state of affairs is about exhausted. Scott was on the point of resigning when Bodley died suddenly in 1907, leaving him in charge. The Cathedral Committee appointed Scott sole architect, and though it reserved the right to appoint another co-architect, it never seriously considered doing so. In 1909, free of Bodley and growing in confidence, Scott submitted an entirely new design for the main body of the cathedral. His original design had 2 towers at the west end and a single transept. The revised plan called for a single central tower 85.344 meters, 280.00 feet, high, topped with a lantern and flanked by twin transepts. The Cathedral Committee, shaken by such radical changes to the design they had approved, asked Scott to work his ideas out in fine detail and submit them for consideration. He worked on the plans for more than a year, and in November 1910, the committee approved them. In addition to the change in the exterior, Scott's new plans provided more interior space. At the same time, Scott modified the decorative style, losing much of the Gothic detailing and introducing a more modern, monumental style. The Lady Chapel, originally intended to be called the Morning Chapel, the first part of the building to be completed, was consecrated in 1910 by Chavus in the presence of 2 archbishops and 24 other bishops. The date, the 29th of June, St. Peter's Day, was chosen to honor the pro-cathedral, now due to be demolished. The Manchester Guardian described the ceremony. The Bishop of Liverpool knocked on the door with his pastoral staff, saying in a loud voice, "Open ye the gates." The doors having been flung open, the Earl of Derby, resplendent in the golden robes of the Chancellor of Liverpool University, presented Dr. Chavus with the petition for consecration. The Archbishop of York, whose cross was carried before him and who was followed by 2 train-bearers clad in scarlet cassocks, was conducted to the cedilla, and the rest of the bishops, with the exception of Dr. Chavus, who knelt before his episcopal chair in the sanctuary, found accommodation in the choir stalls. The richness of the decor of the Lady Chapel may have dismayed some of Liverpool's evangelical clergy. Thomas suggests that they were confronted with a feminized building which lacked reference to the manly and muscular Christian thinking which had emerged in reaction to the earlier feminization of religion. He adds that the building would have seemed to many to be designed for Anglo-Catholic worship. Work was severely limited during the First World War, with a shortage of manpower, materials, and donations. By 1920, the workforce had been brought back up to strength and the stone quarries at Woolton, source of the pinkish-red sandstone for most of the building, reopened. The first section of the main body of the cathedral was complete by 1924. It comprised the chancel, an ambulatory, chapter house and vestries. The section was closed with a temporary wall, and on the 19th of July 1924, the 20th anniversary of the laying of the foundation stone, the cathedral was consecrated in the presence of King George V and Queen Mary, and archbishops and bishops from around the globe. Major work ceased for a year while Scott once again revised his plans for the next section of the building: the tower, the undertower, and the central transept. The tower in his final design was higher and narrower than his 1910 conception. From July 1925 work continued steadily, and it was hoped to complete the whole section by 1940. The outbreak of the Second World War in 1939 caused similar problems to those of the earlier war. The workforce dwindled from 266 to 35. Moreover, the building was damaged by German bombs during the May Blitz. Despite these vicissitudes, the central section was complete enough by July 1941 to be handed over to the dean and chapter. Scott laid the last stone of the last pinnacle on the tower on the 20th of February 1942. No further major works were undertaken during the rest of the war. Scott produced his plans for the nave in 1942, but work on it did not begin until 1948. The bomb damage, particularly to the Lady Chapel, was not fully repaired until 1955. Scott died in 1960. The first bay of the nave was then nearly complete, and was handed over to the dean and chapter in April 1961. Scott was succeeded as architect by Frederick Thomas. Thomas, who had worked with Scott for many years, drew up a new design for the west front of the cathedral. The Guardian commented, "It was an inflation beater, but totally in keeping with the spirit of the earlier work, and its crowning glory is the Benedicite window designed by Carl Edwards and covering 1,600 square feet. The version recorded in Gavin Stamp's obituary of Richard Gilbert Scott, which appeared in The Guardian on the 15th of July 2017, differs slightly. When his father died the following year, 1960, Richard inherited the practice and was left to complete several jobs. He continued with the great work of building Liverpool Cathedral, but, after adding 2 bays of the nave, using cheaper materials, concrete and fiberglass, he resigned when it was proposed drastically to alter his father's design. The cathedral was eventually completed with a much simplified and diminished west end drawn out by his father's former assistant, Roger Pinkney. The completion of the building was marked by a service of thanksgiving and dedication in October 1978, attended by Queen Elizabeth II. In the spirit of ecumenism that had been fostered in Liverpool, the Most Reverend Derek Worlock, Roman Catholic Archbishop of Liverpool, played a major part in the ceremony. In October 2021, the building was one of 142 sites across England to receive part of a £35 million injection into the government's Culture Recovery Fund. The cathedral was built mainly of local sandstone quarried from the South Liverpool suburb of Woolton. The last sections, the well of the cathedral at the west end in the 1960s and 1970s, used the closest matching sandstone that could be found from other northwestern quarries once the supply from Woolton had been exhausted. The bell tower is the largest and the tallest in the world. See list of tallest churches in the world. It houses the world's highest, 67 meters, 220 feet, and heaviest, 16.5 tons, 16.8 tons, ringing peal of bells, and the third heaviest bell, 14.5 tons, 14.7 tons, in the United Kingdom. At 67 meters, 220 feet, above floor level, the bells of Liverpool Cathedral are the highest and heaviest ringing peal in the world. Two lifts are provided for the use of the bell ringers and other visitors to the tower. The peal proper, hung for full circle change ringing, consists of 13 bells weighing a total of 16.5 tons, 16.8 tons, which are named the Bartlett Bells after Thomas Bartlett, died the 4th of September 1912, a native of Liverpool who bequeathed the funding. The bells vary in size and note from the comparatively light 10 hundredweight, 510 kilograms, treble to the tenor weighing just over 4 tons, 4.2 tons. The 13th bell, sharp second, is extra to the main 12-bell peal, and its purpose is to make possible ringing in a correct octave on lighter bells. All 13 bells were cast by Mears and Steinbank of Whitechapel in London. The initial letters of the inscriptions on the 13 bells spell out the name, Thomas Bartlett, from tenor to treble. The Bartlett bells are hung in a circle around the Borden Bell, Great George. At 14.5 tons, 14.7 tons, Great George is the third most massive bell in the British Isles. Only the 16.5 tons, 16.8 tons, Great Paul of St. Paul's Cathedral in London, and the 2012 Olympic bell, 22.91 tons, are heavier. However, as the ringing mechanism of Great Paul is currently broken, and has been for several years, and the Olympic bell is never rung, Great George is currently the largest ringing bell in the British Isles. Great George, cast by tailors of Loughborough and named in memory of George V, is hung in a pendant position and is sounded by means of a counterbalanced clapper. The organ, built by Henry Willis and Sons, is the largest pipe organ in the UK, and one of the largest musical instruments in the world. It has two 5-manual consoles, one sited high up in one of the organ cases and the other, a mobile console, on the floor of the cathedral, 10,268 pipes, and a trompette militaire. There is an annual anniversary recital on the Saturday nearest to the 18th of October, the date of the organ's consecration. There is a separate 2-manual Willis organ in the Lady Chapel. In 1931, Scott asked Edward Carter Preston to produce a series of sculptures for Liverpool Cathedral. The project was an immense undertaking which occupied the artist for the next 30 years. The work for the cathedral included 50 sculptures, 10 memorials and several reliefs. Many inscriptions in the cathedral were jointly written by Dean Dwelly and the sculptor who subsequently carved them. In 1993, the Welcoming Christ, a large bronze sculpture by Dame Elizabeth Frink, was installed over the outside of the west door of the cathedral. This was one of her last completed works, installed within days of her death. In 2003, the Liverpool artist, Don Kinlay, who knew Carter Preston from his youth, was commissioned by the cathedral to model an infant Christ to accompany the 15th century Madonna by Giovanni della Robbia, Madonna now situated in the Lady Chapel. In 2008, a work entitled For You by Tracy Emin was installed at the west end of the cathedral below the Benedicite window. The pink neon sign reads, "I felt you and I knew you loved me," and was installed when Liverpool became European Capital of Culture. The work was originally intended to be a temporary installation for 1 month as part of the Capital of Culture program, but is now a permanent feature. Another work by Emin, the Roman Standard, takes the form of a small bronze sparrow on a metal pole, and was installed in 2005 outside the Oratory Chapel close to the west end of the cathedral. The sparrow was stolen, twice, in 2008, but on both occasions was returned and replaced. The firm of James Powell and Sons, Whitefriars, Limited of London, provided most of the stained glass designs. John William Brown, 1842 to 1928, designed the Te Deum window in the east end of the cathedral, as well as the original windows for the Lady Chapel, which was heavily damaged during German bombing raids in 1940. The glass in the Lady Chapel was replaced with designs, based on the originals, by James Humphreys Hogan, 1883 to 1948. He was one of the most prolific of the Powell and Sons designers. His designs can also be seen in the large north and south windows in the central space of the cathedral, each 100 feet tall. Later artists include William Wilson, 1905 to 1972, who began his work at Liverpool Cathedral after the death of Hogan, Herbert Hendry, 1887 to 1946, and Carl Edwards, 1914 to 1985, who designed the Benedicite window in the west front. The cathedral has approximately 1,700 square meters of stained glass. Bishop Chavis and Sir Giles Gilbert Scott are buried in the precinct of the cathedral, the former in Founder's Plot, and the latter at the west end of the site. Clergy buried within the cathedral include the bishops Albert David and David Shepherd. Among the benefactors whose remains are buried in the cathedral are the first Baron Vesti and his brother, Sir Edmund Vesti, and Frederick Radcliffe. The ashes of the donor of the cathedral bells, Thomas Bartlett, are interred in a casket in the ringing room. At the rear of the memorial to the 55th, West Lancashire, Division rest the ashes of Lieutenant General Sir Hugh Judwine, who commanded the division from its formation in 1916 until the end of the First World War. Victoria Cross recipient Sergeant Arthur Herbert Lindsay Richardson, 1872–1932, is buried here, having been reinterred from the St. James Cemetery.
Right everybody, that is the end of the video. I hope you all enjoyed. Please don't forget to like, subscribe and comment, and we'll see you soon all on the next one. Bye everyone, thank you.